Bitcoin guides the crypto market, and it is showing us that there is a big possibility that this candle can close like what you see in front of you. That's a bullish engulfing candle. And if Bitcoin can do that and reverse this form of action back above this level, which is a key support level, then obviously we are watching there is a higher odds in the market to push towards 44, then 46, all the way up to 49. What does that mean? Whether you're an XRP, you're like, okay, fine. We need to see this range breaking to the upside, and that is a significant level of support resistance zone for XRP. Now, to be precise, what would that mean in the price terms? That's 0.544. So put it 0.55. If XRP can break that level 0.55, then now we are going back into that territory, into that pattern which we really want to follow through and break higher. Is that going to happen? We'll have to look at the entire alt market. We'll have to look at the ether and look for what possibilities we do see. Because when you are in the market and you're watching through a lot of different assets, you see some of them still show you that bearish divergence. Some of them are still showing you the negative divergence. You haven't erased them. So you have to be cautious in this market. And a lot of these assets, some of them, yes, for sure, they showed us opportunity. They're now breaking higher. Opportunities are still there, for sure. But you need to take time going through the market, searching through the assets and understanding which of them are getting the volume and the breakout. That's where you get to see these real opportunities in the market. Welcome to the Scientific Investor family, where the normal retail guys get to learn how to become the next top 10% of this world. We actually went through a lot of different discussions, going through what it's showing us, and say before the price actually started moving up, we had this thought process. Look at the RSI. It is showing you there is an increased possibility that we will break to the upside. That was something which the RSI pointed us towards, and we just saw what happened in the market. But still, there's a lot of different questions being asked in the market. Is this a fake out? Are we going to go back down? What we as the retail in the market should understand or focus on is whenever a candle, that to a weekly candle, closed like this in front of us, what followed? That's an important thing to note. One, when you had these candles below the moving average, here I'm using a 21-day moving average standard on the weekly chart, you had some consolidation before you went up. But when you had a similar candle above the moving average or on the moving average, it went up immediately to the upside. Now I'm like, okay, fine. So you had two scenarios where this similar candle happened below the moving average, and one instance above the moving average and one on or just above it. So while we are still here, and we are watching, there is an increased possibility that in the next 2 days, 48 hours, we may actually get a candle close like this. That means bulls are back in the game. Say you look at XRP, while we look at the price action on a daily, we do have to look at this and say, okay, there is an increased possibility that the RSI is showing you it can break higher. Because it's not just that breakout, it will be a double bottom signal breaking to the upside. So we want to actually see this confirmation. RSI going above 50 on the daily chart. Say you're not that interested on the short-term scenario in this asset, but still think about this. If you're not a trend line guy, if you're not a pattern guy, you're still watching how the supply and demand play out in this market. I mean, there is nothing else. That's the primary, that's the basis of the market if you are trying to analyze it. Here, you actually see the price going up. So the supply and demand is literally pushing the price to the downside, meaning supply is more, demand is comparatively less. But At that point, you still get this agreement from the RSI saying the buyers are stepping down onto that territory where they are pushing the accelerator. They're buying in as much as possible. That gives a lot of credibility here. So while you look at that bullish divergence, that means possibly we would actually see something like this happening. So going back up to test this level is going to be great news for anyone in XRP. But what about the entire market? Because literally, if there is no big news, XRP is not going to move alone. It will move with the market. And the market sentiment is basically, as we can see here, people are sharing a lot of different thought process, especially when cred actually shows something like this. Like, fine, that's a clear understanding in a different way for sure, but it shows you that it's changing. Bulls are trying to get the control back, and that's a good thing to know. And when you are here watching how this ETF war, the fee war is playing out, you're literally looking at that and saying like, okay, you're watching Fidelity playing big role in this. Now, this has been there just for a week, right? So while you actually see in 10 days or below that, these institutions are loading up on their Bitcoin, which is a huge factor to see. So by the end here, you're literally watching through them and saying like, okay, watch this. They are massively holding on to this asset for some reason. That's where it comes to. It boils down to that. You're watching the total movement. Okay. What happened here? So the amount of narrative which enters the market kind of pushing you to the storyline that sell your Bitcoin, it's about to drop hard, dead towards maybe 10,000, maybe 5,000, maybe 3,000, maybe lower, is still going to be there. But the decision has to be made by you, right? Everyone will give their thought process, but I would argue you should make your decision based on what the market shows you. And if I'm saying something and you can see that in the market and validate, okay, this guy makes some sense based on what the market is showing us, then it's okay. Otherwise, neglect it. But here I am trying to show you the price is still at the same range where it has been, which is a positive signal. Say you just pull up a horizontal line to be accurate and plot it here, you'll see something like this. The price is being literally respected by that level, or buyers think this is an undervalued price point for this asset and they're buying it. You're watching that the strength of sellers increased, but they were not able to pull the price down to this point. Now I'm like, okay, sellers are weak. Buyers are strong at this point, which is a positive thing. So now you slowly go back on the weekly. You want to see, okay, what the hell is really happening? And you're like, okay, that's a macro breakout. You're literally watching a possible retest happening here and we may go up. But inside the same asset, when you try to break it down, say this is Ether on a weekly, you want to go to a 3-day, this is what you're watching, right? Here on a 3-day, which is a shorter horizon, you're watching that the price action is showing you a hidden bullish divergence. Great. But the issue there is that the weekly is showing you something like this, where the price action is going up, the divergence is going down. That's a negative divergence. So historically speaking, we go back. We want to see where we saw something similar and what happened. We had something like this happening here, but that was not the right one. Whereas this one was kind of accurate. Now, it's not the actual top to be precise, but that was close to the top. So if you're waiting here, I would personally argue that those people who give you a $20,000 Ether, maybe they are going to be wrong this time. Maybe the price action is going to show you something different. Because the thought process here is like, okay, for example, if you actually go back up, this acting as a trend line and you go back up, that's a whole different story. You're now talking about $8,000, $10,000 Ether. But if that makes a negative divergence here, then you're literally looking for 5, 6, not way above that, right? So that's where you need to look at the price action and ask the question, are you following the price so closely? Do you understand the macro trend? Do you understand what that price action is doing on the shorter horizon? Because if both of them confirm there is a negative momentum building up, that's time where you have to quit that asset. Right now, you go on to say some of these assets, whether you take CFX, whether you take AKT, you go into the price action. You want to actually see what that asset is showing you on a longer horizon. Say on a shorter movement, this is what we just saw. Okay, we dropped 30%, but the price is slowly grinding back up. So you're moving on. You're going to a 3-day chart. You see a divergence. You go on to a weekly chart. You're watching. Divergence was close enough, but not the perfect one, right? Not the perfect one. So there is still a possibility that just like last time, you may actually see something like this, where the price does this and the RSI does this. So if you watch this asset, if it's not breaking the local roof it made recently, the most recent one, that's going to be a negative signal for this asset. But at the same time, remember, last time this happened, the moment this asset reversed from that local category of movement, that was where you saw a lot of altcoins, the large cap altcoins moving. Now, we're not complaining about any asset. This asset has already done a decent ROI structure, close to 20x. That's great because most of the market has not done anything and this asset has generated 20x. So that means now the money is about to rotate to other assets. You're watching where that money is flowing into. If you're not, I would argue you should be looking at that. That's one of the reasons why we are going through a lot of these assets, trying to break things down into that range in a lot of assets. So you understand what really is happening in that particular asset, what really is happening in this particular asset, where is your target, where is heavy resistance, because you want to make sure if you are to take profit, you want to take profit just below that macro overhead resistance. That gives you an advantage in the market. So now, when you're back looking at XRP, you're like, okay, short term, this is what we are looking at. On a macro, we're still here. We haven't actually done any movement, but we're still at one trend line. Historically, we have seen something similar in a lot of different assets where they consolidated after one big move and then they go for the next move. That usually happens to be a bigger move in price action. So having patience in XRP is not a new story, but you are going to be tested. The level of patience which you have will be tested. This is an asset which is competing against the banks, central banks. So for sure, you will see that amount of resistance. So before we close up this video, I would really like you guys to understand the fact that Bitcoin takes the market from one end to another. So you looking at the Bitcoin dominance and understanding what's happening there, I would argue is super important. We actually had a thought process of this bouncing back up to test the range of 52.5 to 53 while we were still at this range. Now, what was the reason? The price was going down, but the RSI was going up. That's one of the primary reasons I was saying, guys, watch. We may actually go up here. And now that we are here, I would argue, okay, let's zoom in. Let's actually see what's really happening. Do we have a negative divergence? Not yet. Not yet. We still have a trend line moving in. In yesterday's video, we went through that. So if you have seen that, you already understand what we are looking at. But as soon as this trend line breaks to the downside, that's a great time to be in the alt market. And that's one of the reasons why you're watching a lot of these altcoins starting to do 10, 20, 30% day again. Just like we saw in October, November, December phase, you were literally watching a lot of these assets running higher. So if you are looking for those opportunities, I would argue that this is going to give you an added advantage in this crypto market. If you want to make that yours, look at the Patreon. The link is given in the description below in YouTube or in bio on the Twitter. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, I would request you consider smashing that. That supports the channel a lot. I'll meet you guys on the next video. Bye for now.